Alright guys, welcome back. My name is John. This is 3D Comic Creator. This week we're going to do some freestyle in Blender. That means we're going to export from Daz, open up in Blender, then render it with the freestyle rendering engine. To do that, we're going to follow a basic set of steps. And part one, we're going to install the Teleblender Daz to Blender script. And that's going to help us quickly get our artwork out from Daz and into Blender. Number two, we're going to prepare our Daz scene for export. There's a few things we need to do to kind of clean up and make life easier on the Blender side. Number three, we'll actually do the export using Teleblender. I'll show you how that script works. Number four, we'll import the scene into Blender. Number five, we'll do some basic cleanup and organizing while we're in Blender. Number six, we'll activate Freestyle, set up our environment. And finally, number seven, we'll set up our lines and render with Freestyle. And this seems like a lot, but trust me, you'll be flying through all these steps once you get the hang of it. And I'll also have a text write-up of this video just because it's going to be pretty dense with information, and you'll be able to see the link in the description. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so our first steps here, we got to go get that Teleblender script and we're going to install it. There's two parts to it. It has to go into Daz and then part of it has to go into Blender. So let's go over to that site. And where do I have that? Here we go. So I'll put the link for this in the description so you can get there easily. First thing we're going to do is just scroll all the way to the bottom. There's a lot of information here. You guys can read that later. Right now, what you got to do is download both of these. So this BlendBot is a bunch of scripts that go into Blender that help recreate your file in Blender. This bottom one, this beta script, is what goes into Daz to spit out the file for Blender to import. So let's go ahead and get these downloaded. That's one, that's two. Okay, so then let me just go to that download folder. All right, so what we got to do, let's take this script first that goes into Daz, and I'll just copy that. And so I'm going to put that, I have these Daz Studio files here. I have my Daz 3D library. You'll probably have a different setup than me, but the bottom line is it goes into one of your scripts folders. So I ended up with this MCasual folder. You don't have to do that though. Anyway, I have a bunch of these in here. I have his FBX script too. You don't have to do that. Really, it's just this one script that needs to be there. So then what I would do, I'm going to go back to Daz. Eventually. There we go. And so what I would do is in my content manager, I would just say scan known directories for files. And once it does that, you'll be able to get that script. So for me, I had put it in my Daz 3D library. And I'm going to scroll down. Scripts. MCasual. So here they are. And you don't have to worry if you don't want to put it in there. If I wanted to just load it from anywhere, let's say I have it on my desktop, I can just merge it in. I'll go to File, Merge, and I'll just go to Desktop. Here it is. Let me just double click it. That's what this script looks like. But before I get to this, I'm going to install the rest of it in Blender, just so we can get all of our installing done. Let's go back to my Downloads folder, which is the wrong one. All right, one of these. Here we go. Okay, so I got to unzip this BlendBot folder. Let's just extract all these. Sure, that's fine. Okay, so this is everything that needs to get into Blender. Copy these. So on Windows, I'm on Windows here. I'm going to go to where my Blender install is, which is C, Program Files, Blender Foundation. 2.81 is what I've got here. Another 2.81 folder. And it goes in the scripts folder. And in here, it goes into the modules. So you'll see I already put these in here. I've got MCJ, all of these BlendBot scripts already in here. This is where you would put these on Windows. Now, if you were on the Mac, what I'm going to do I should be able to get to that. Okay, so this is me. I just logged into my Mac from here. Essentially, if you're on the Mac, you need to go to your library. So your username, then your library, then you've got to go to application support. Find Blender, and then find your version. So 2.82, scripts, and then on the Mac, it goes in add-ons, whereas in Windows, it went into modules. And that's just what worked for me. Let's double click this. All right, so here they all are. So if you put them in this spot, it should work for you on the Mac. Okay, so that should be all we need for the installs. I'm going to go back to Daz here. Next, we're just going to clean up some of the Daz issues before we export. And that should be real quick though. Let's go ahead and get that started. Okay then, before we export, there's a few things I like to do with the scene. And the number one thing is I'm going to get rid of these lights because these will have no bearing whatsoever in Blender. What we can also do, the script will actually have a checkbox for if you want to export your lights or your cameras. This script is kind of a beta version though, so some of the buttons don't work right. I think this one does work, but I just end up cleaning it up anyway. Also, I'm going to get rid of these extra cameras that I have. I don't need those either. See if we can just dump those. Okay, this point light as well. Let's get rid of this one. All right, because those aren't going to do anything in Blender. So then another thing we need to do that's pretty important is we need to set everything, every mesh to its base resolution. So let me click on Genesis here. And I've got mesh resolution selected in the parameters. You can see over here, we've got high resolution. And what that is that Daz is smoothing out the mesh, faking adding geometry to make it look smoother, even though you have less geometry. But when we export to Blender, that geometry will become real. So we're going to have a ton of geometry that we really don't need because we can recreate that smoothing effect in Blender with the subsurf modifier. And let me just show you what I mean here. I have this file in Blender. So this is that Genesis mesh. And this one here is my base resolution. This one here is my high resolution. I'm just going to turn on my wireframe. All right. So you can see this one on the right is very dense compared to the one on the left. This one clearly has less geometry. Let me just click in here. I'm going to tab into my edit mode. We can see at the bottom, 76,000 verts, 151,000 edges, 75,000 faces. Okay, that's quite a lot. And imagine if you have 3 of those figures, 5 of them. Let's click on this guy. Okay. So he's got 19,000 verts, 38,000 edges, and 18,000 faces. That's way less. So that's what we want. And then if we need to, we can smooth them out using Blender's own smoothing or subsurf modifiers. So I'm going to get back. And I'm pretty sure in my piece here, only Genesis is using higher resolution. So I got that set. Okay. Really, we're really set to go here. And what you have to do, I don't know these by heart. I mean, I click on these things. I would just run through, make sure everything's on base. I happen to know those buildings are not on high resolution, so we should be good. And aside from that, we're going to kick over into the scripting part next. Okay, now it's finally time to go ahead and export this scene and get it into Blender. So I'm just going to go double click my script. And there's only a couple things. This looks kind of weird. I know there's a lot of buttons, a lot of stuff, but really don't worry about it. The only thing we have to worry about is here, where we're going to export. Let's browse this. I think I'm going to just put this stuff here. I'll call it Freestyle, and let's save it. So if you're on Windows, you really won't even see this again, but I'll show you a couple more things that can be adjusted. Like this stuff here, we're just going to change all this in Blender anyway, so it doesn't even matter. Okay, so then auxiliary options. Collect maps. This part isn't very important for me right now because I'm not using opacity maps. If you're using opacity to for hair or something, you'll probably want to collect the maps because at least Blender will put it in there. Freestyle won't draw a line based on your opacity map, but at least you'll get the correct shape in the render. I'm going to turn that off. I need this export current Daz camera, so that one is critical, just so I can match it up with my Daz render later on. Now I turned off this export lights, but I did notice that it still did it anyway. That's why I deleted those earlier. So we'll get rid of those. And here, the location of Blender. This is really important on Windows because if the script knows where Blender is, it will just open it up and it will just run the Blender scripts and import your scene, and you'll be done. So let's just try that. If you're going to do that, you would click Export Open Current Frame. Let's try it out. And of course, the bigger your scene is, the longer this is going to take. Okay, so it's opening up Blender for me. And we're not doing anything, it's just doing its own thing. Let me click off this window. And pretty much there's my scene. And that's pretty much all you got to do for every item if you're on Windows. Now, if you're on the Mac, it's a bit different. Actually, I'm going to close this without saving. And then let's get back here. So on the Mac, this is looking for a Blender exe. Clearly, you're going to have blender.app. I couldn't get it to work even if I did direct it to the Blender app. So that means that you got to export this thing and import it yourself, which is still not bad. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell it to export. That script was already there, but I'll do it anyway. Now I'm going to go into Blender. Eventually. There we go. Let's open that up. So all you got to do, so you got these tabs at the top. Just click on scripting. We're going to click open. And we'll find that one. And let's see, Freestyle tutorial. There it is. Let's open that. I'm going to get this window over a little bit here. There we go. So you don't have to do anything. I mean, here's this whole script. Yeah, it's all there. You don't have to do anything here except click Run Script. Then we'll let it run for a little bit. Of course, again, if your scene is very complex, it's going to take a long time. This should get done in a little bit though. Okay, it's done. And look at the bottom. It says script failed, Python script failed. Well, I don't pay attention to that unless something actually is wrong with my scene. If something's wrong, then I'll take a look and see what the log said. If it looks fine, I don't care what that error says. All right, all you got to do now is just go back to the Layout tab. I'm going to get rid of this Blender camera. I'm going to press 0 on the numpad, and there I am. Home key will fit that in there. All right, that looks like my scene. And that's really how quick it is. So all that setup work, once you get that done, you're just a couple of clicks away from getting your scene into Blender. So next, we're going to clean up some of this stuff in this scene before we get to the good stuff with Freestyle. Okay, now that we're in Blender here, we got to do a little basic cleanup beforehand, and I like to do some setup. Let me look on the side here. I'm going to go to my render properties and just make sure I'm in cycles. My computer has a GPU. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on, and I hope that helps with Freestyle. I'm not sure if it helps that much, because Freestyle is actually pretty processor intensive. It's tough on your computer, which you will see in just a little bit. But also, let me pull this whole column out here, just so we can see more. Over here is my outliner. This is like our scene tab in Daz. So one thing I'm going to do, they used to have layers in Daz, or in Blender, but now in 2.8 we have these collections. So this is like me making my own layers. Now what I want to do is select some of these, get them out of here. I want to hide some of this stuff, so I want to organize it. Alright, I'm going to close up my whole collection here. Let's make a new one. I'm just going to make this the city. Okay, so then my city buildings are all down here. I'm going to press the B key. What this is context aware, like B over here means something different than it does here. So if I press B here, it's going to let me box select. Actually, I think it does work like that over there too. Anyway, all I have to do is press the M key for move. It's going to ask me where I want to put that. I'm going to put it in city. There you go. I'm going to close that up. Actually, this can go there too. This plane, city. All right, so let me turn that off. Okay, that's good. Now we can kind of see what's going on. This default camera, I want to move into my basic scene collection. So that's out here on its own. I'm going to hide that. Okay, what else is in here? I think we're good for now. I'm going to press the home key just so that fills as close as possible. So what you're probably seeing right now is we got some of our extra stuff that was hidden by opacity maps. They're showing in the viewport here, and I could leave those opacity maps, but instead I'm going to go ahead and delete a lot of this extra geometry. So the way to do that, I'm going to click on this, and the easiest way, let's just bring this up, bring up this properties, or I'm going to choose my materials. Okay, so that's good. Now I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to press the A key twice really quick to deselect. So I'm just going to select by material. You can see here that there's nothing showing. I got a couple of dots over here. These are kind of a quick preview of what that material is going to look like. And if there's nothing there, that's telling you that that's going to be transparent at render time. But I think I'd feel better if it was just gone, so I'm going to click select. And I'm going to press the Z key. I'm going to bring up a flyout window. I'm going to go to my wireframe. Okay, we can see something is selected back there. Select and select. I'm going to press the X key, and I'm going to delete the faces. When you do this, try to just delete faces. If you delete vertices, sometimes you can end up deleting another row or two than you actually mean to. So I'm going to delete those faces. All right, press the Z key and get my flywheel back to solid. Okay, so that's gone. And I'm going to get rid of these material zones as well. But if I try to do that and I'm in edit mode, let's just see what happens here. It's telling me I can't do that. So I got to tab back into object mode. Only then can I delete those. So you're just doing some basic cleanup. We can see here on his goggles, I had hidden the frames. Let's tab into edit mode, A twice. You know what? I'm going to see if I got those screencast keys somewhere. I'm going to press the N key. I do. I'm going to turn these on. Okay. So once again, we can see over here, this stuff is on. This stuff is going to render. This I actually named hidden. I'll select that. Something in the back there. It's not going to be seen anyway, so I'm going to hit the X key, delete faces. Then I'll go back, delete these materials. This is all stuff that's going to make our render go a bit faster if the renderer doesn't have to account for extra faces and materials and such that aren't even being used. Okay, so this breastplate, Clearly there's some stuff here. Let's tap into edit mode. Okay, I'm going to pull this down. This stuff is being used. This here, let's select that. And then let's get this. Get our wireframe. Right, that's in the back. Back to solid. We're going to get rid of those faces. Tab back into object mode. Get rid of these material zones. So that looks good. Then you can see that I've got some poke through happening here. So most of this poke through is happening because I turned off the, or I turned down the resolution in Daz. I turned it down to base. If I were to go here, click on this Genesis, I'm going to go to my modifiers. Then Blender can make a subdivision subsurface modifier, which is similar to smoothing in Daz. And once I add that, you see that most of that poke through is gone. However, I'm going to fix that a different way. I'm actually going to go, let's click on him, tab into edit mode. As it stands, I don't need all this geometry. I only need his head. So let's get out of that. I'm going to go back to my materials. Let's pull this all the way open. Then, if I open this disclosure triangle, I can sort these alphabetically. And I can see here just by the look of these icons, I only need 4 of these. So what I'm going to do is just, let's pull this back up so I can get to this select button. Select that, select the nostril, face, and then the head. So that's all I need. Let's get in the wireframe. And then I'm just going to do a Control I or select invert. Now I got everything that shouldn't be showing anyway. I'm going to press the X key, delete those faces. So that's a bunch of stuff gone. Let's go back to solid. Okay, I'm going to tab back in object mode. And then I'm going to get rid of all these unnecessary material zones. However, I'm going to turn this alphabetical off because it's just a lot easier to delete that way. Alright, let's just get rid of these. Gotta be careful when I get down to the ones I actually need. Let's get rid of that one. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and save. So that's good. Now the final bit of poke through I have here on the gloves. And this bodysuit is kind of poking through. I'm gonna fix that a different way. I could delete those edges, or I could, if I increase the size of the gloves, that would work too, but it wouldn't fit my render. The lines then wouldn't fit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this shirt, and I'm going to press this /, which should bring me into my local editing zone. Everything else is gone. I'm just working on this. I'm going to tab into my edit mode, hit A twice. So what I want to do is shrink these sleeves. And let's just see if I can get that ring. I'm going to press the period key on the numpad. That's going to just zoom me up on whatever I've got selected. All right, I'm going to grab this ring right here. Then what I'm going to do is turn on my proportional editing by clicking this button. So then I'm going to scale this in, and the vertices that are nearby within the influence of my influence sphere are going to follow along with what I'm doing, which you'll see now. So I'm going to hit the S key to scale. And you see how everything's moving? Everything is moving here, but I don't want that. So I'm going to hit the page down button. And I'm doing that to bring down this influence sphere, which you can now see coming into shape there. So I'm going to bring that in. I think you can use a scroll wheel as well. I just use a Wacom tablet, so I don't have a scroll wheel. But let's go ahead and tab back out and just see if that worked or not. It looks like that worked, because I don't see the poke through there. Alright, so I just have to get the other one. Alright, double click A to deselect that. Let's get this. Numpad period zooms me up on it. I'm still in proportional editing mode. let's take a look at this. Let's scale it in. Now this should hopefully get rid of 0 to zoom up on that. Okay, I think I'm good to go there. That poke through is gone. And it should still match my original lines for the most part. And save. Okay. So then at this point, what we're going to do is activate Freestyle. We're going to set it up and do a test render. Alright, so it's finally time to get some of these lines going for Freestyle. But first we've got to set it up by going to our render properties here. Now Freestyle is a post process that happens after the render. So you want to get that render out of the way as quickly as is practical. Now I'm going to set this to 1, these samples. That means the actual render is going to go really quick, and then it's going to continue on to make the lines. But we're going to revisit this because I'll show you what happens when we set this to 1. Anyway, we've got to go down here to film, and we've got to check transparent. That way you can lay your lines more easily on top of your previous render. And we actually have to turn on Freestyle. There's not many options here. There's absolute and relative. And absolute means that when you have a line thickness of 1 pixel, no matter how big your render is, it's going to always look like 1 point. If I change it to relative, then whatever my settings are in Freestyle, then if I set it to 10 point, Freestyle will try to make it look like 10 point no matter how big my render actually is. I'm going to set it back to absolute because I'm just used to working that way. Okay, we're done pretty much here. Next we have to go to our layer properties, and this filter area, we got to turn off everything but Freestyle. So let's uncheck that. Then we will have a bunch of options down here. This main Freestyle setting, actually you'll see we have 3. Line set, line style, and Freestyle. So view map cache, this is essentially the entirety of my scene. So for now I got this one guy. So this is my view map right here. So that's pretty small. But later on we're going to add buildings and such. It's going to get pretty big. So if you don't want to recalculate that view map every time, then you'll check this. It'll cache it and it'll go a lot quicker. However, if you make any geometry changes, you'll need to uncheck that so they can be calculated. Now face smoothness, this only works if your mesh is set to smooth, set to shade smooth. Now ours pretty much are, because they'd look pretty ratty if they weren't. So we'll just leave it at that. Culling is for lines or faces that would be hidden. It's not even going to calculate those as long as we have this checkbox on. Okay, so I'm going to just do a render, and we're going to see what happens here. Okay, this should go fairly quickly. And I'm going to press the home key. That brings the whole render in. If I press shift home, it fills the screen. So, okay, we're done. I don't know if you can really even see this. I'm going to make some changes so you guys can see a little bit better. So first I'm going to go back to my render properties. In film, I'm going to turn off transparent. Okay, then I got to go back to my filter. I'm going to tell it to render the environment, but I need to tell it what environment to render in my world properties. So I got a background. Right now I'm going to get this gray color. That's not going to be much better, so I'm going to kick that up to white. Then to make it really bright, I'll just make it 5. Okay, so let's do another render. Here we go. Home key, and then shift home. We'll bring it all the way up. You can probably see up here it's saying view map computation. Really quick. Okay, so this is what we get. Now these are just serviceable. Let's see if we can zoom in. Now you can see that these are kind of jaggy. They, you know, it's just serviceable right now, not looking too good. And this is because I set that render sample at 1. So even though Freestyle doesn't really get rendered, it does take the information from that render. So when I only give it 1 sample, it doesn't have that much information to make its lines. It really needs more information than that. So I'm going to go back, and I think what I'm going to do, I'll change this to slot 3. I'll go back here, and then in our render properties, I probably would put this to 32. You could probably get away with 24. But let's see what happens. So I'm going to leave this up here. The render still happens fairly quickly. And we should be able to compare those strokes. Alright, you can see that that is pretty much a lot smoother. Let's go back one. Yeah, that's what we had originally. And let's see, yeah, you can see the difference there. So try to kick those samples up if you can. If it doesn't matter, then put it all the way down to 1, but I think these look a little bit better. So that's our very first render. Right now, this doesn't look great. There's a lot of things that we can do to spruce up these lines. I think what we'll do next is try to put some style on these, and I'll show you what the line sets and the line styles will do to punch this up. Okay, so let's punch this up a little bit. So what I would do here, I'm going to go back. Let's close this. I'm going to go back to Freestyle, and let's close this up. Let's work on this line set. So the line set is especially just saying, where am I going to draw these lines, and how am I going to determine where the lines are drawn? So that's what my line set is. So what we can see is that I have a couple of options up here. Like I'm telling it to select by visibility. That means it's going to ask that question. Visible lines, hidden lines, QI range. I'm telling it that the lines have to be visible. Then it can also choose edge types, which is down here. Right now we have these default edge types. These are probably the most common ones that you would use. I'm going to turn on external contour as well, and we'll see what those do when we render it. But the next one's face marks. These are ones that I would have to specifically mark myself to be drawn. For example, if I was to click here, I'm going to press the home key. So these faces are selected. Actually, I'm going to face mode. Under face data, I would choose mark freestyle face. Now if I did that, and I told it to select face marks, then it would draw lines everywhere I did that. Okay, now collection, that is our scene collection and the collections we made earlier. And I can specify to either draw or exclude from different collections. Now image border is always on. It helps you in the sense that lines that are outside of your image, outside of your camera, will not be considered. And that's normally fine unless you were trying to animate. If you were animating, you'd probably turn this off, because from what I understand from reading, then Freestyle has trouble calculating things that move in and out of the camera. If outside they're not considered, inside they are, it's too much for it to deal with, I guess. Anyway, so we're going to leave those on. And I'm going to close this real quick. So then we're going to move to our line style. So the line set decides where these are going to be drawn. The line style says what those lines are going to look like. Okay, so our first tab here is chaining. Now chaining is going to connect your lines as if they're one single line. If I were to turn this off, everywhere there's a face, it would stop, and there would be a break, and it would look like almost a dotted line, a dashed line. So we don't want that. We can have plain or we can have sketchy. Sketchy we'll try to, I guess, draw 2 or 3 more lines, whatever you determine. If I was to turn on sketchy, I could tell it to, 5 lines, 9. I wouldn't want to do that. I'm going to turn that off. Normally, I don't use this. Now, same object says to chain these together only if they're on the same object. And I'm going to turn that off because I think you get smoother lines if it really considers everything. So, we'll see what it looks like. I'm not going to do anything down here. I got color. I'm going to leave that black. I could change it if I wanted to. Alpha, I'm going to leave it at 1. So it's going to be all the way opaque. Now thickness, this is kind of where the magic happens. So we can see that I have a base thickness of 3. What I'm going to do now is add a modifier. So what I used to do to get kind of variation in the line, I would choose calligraphy, and I would kind of go through these options, but I started using, instead of calligraphy, a long stroke. So what this is going to do is it's going to have a minimum value. I can tell it never be lower than 0.5. So no line will ever be lower than 0.5. And I can tell it to make the maximum 10. And if I leave it on mix, this is going to supersede this setting up here. I can change this to multiply. Then I'm going to be multiplying that. That's way too much. I'll leave it at mix. I'm going to let's just see what that looks like. Let's check it out. Okay. And as these get longer, I'm going to just jump ahead. I think, actually, let me press the home key here. Shift home. Alright, so that's what I've done. It's very thin here because I went to 0.5. And let me just zoom in. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more stylish, but not exactly what I want. That might be a little bit too much variation. That's a little bit more than I wanted. So I'm going to, let's just X out of that. Okay, so I'm going to put this at 1.5. This I'm going to put at 7. Let's see how that looks. And really, you just got to play around. There's some areas I see here where lines are not being drawn where I want them to be. So for some reason, despite all the stuff I had on, I'm not getting like his mouth here, the fullness of this hood, some of these inner lines. I may have to go in and specifically mark those to be drawn. And I think I'd like some more stuff in here too. So you can tell it's looking pretty interesting. I think some of these lines are still too thin for my liking. I'm going to go back. And actually, you know what I can do? I might change this to a curve instead of linear. So when you do this curve, I found that I'm going to just put this up here. Let's make it, what is this? What is this curve? I'm going to change this to like, let's see, 0.2. Let's try that. No, my y will be 0.2. And if you kind of make these go in and out around the same point, then you can get kind of a smooth line. And you can see I can put a lot more variation in this line than just doing a linear. So let's see what that looks like. And shift home, zoom that in. Okay, stroke rendering. Okay, it's a bit different. I think what I'm going to do is add one more thing to this, which is a little bit of noise. And we're going to put that in the geometry section. So what I can do is add a modifier here. Sampling is always there no matter what. This is a default thing, so don't get rid of that. But I'm going to put in some purlin noise, which I think this will work. So this is going to put in some variation and make it look more natural, I guess. And the frequency is how often that noise happens on your line. Amplitude is how strong that effect is. I'm just going to kick this up so you can actually see what this looks like and what it's doing. So let's do a shift home. And of course, the more of those effects, the more modifiers, the more things you turn on, the longer things are going to take. But so far, we only got this one character. So yeah, you can see what that did. That's not what we want, but you can see that if we were to use that sparingly, it could end up being useful. Let's put that frequency to 10. Amplitude, I'm going to put all the way down to 2. Okay, let's redo that. I mean, it ends up being a lot of fun playing around with it and just seeing how those lines come out. Sometimes you discover an effect that you weren't expecting and it works well for you. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's like I had a shaky hand when I was inking. I kind of like it. I think I'll leave it at that. What I'm going to do next, we're going to make another line set. We're going to start building these up. And I don't want to ruin this one. I don't want to change this one. But I'm going to add kind of an outline, a thicker outline. And hopefully I can use that to kind of set it up in the background when we eventually bring those buildings in. Okay, so moving on. We're going to put a thick outline around this guy. So let's get back into Blender, and what I'm going to do, instead of changing this one, I'm going to make a new line set. But before I do that, I'll just name this one main, just to keep everything kind of organized. This one will be called outline. And so I then have to choose which lines are going to be drawn. And down here, I don't want any of these. Really, I only want external contour, and that's going to just get me the outside of everything. So that should be fine. I think what I'm going to do, let's close this up. Done with the line set. This I will rename, just so I know what it is. And because when you close these up, sometimes you don't remember which one you're on. It's pretty good to always name these. So let's style this thing up. Here I got strokes. I'm going to leave this chaining on, and I'm going to turn off same object, because to me I usually get smoother lines that way. For color, what I will do, see, I'm going to close this up. I'm going to change this to something vivid so we can easily see what's going on. Let's see, alpha, I'll leave alone. Thickness, I'm going to add in a different modifier. Before I used the along stroke to get some variation in the width of those strokes. This time I'm going to use distance from object. So what that's going to do, if I have an object in my scene, I can choose that as the target object, and then I can tell it, as you get further away, do this, make thinner or make thicker. So right now I don't have anything else besides him. I'm going to Shift A, add in a cube. Let me hit the S key, scale that down. And I'm going to move this off to the left here, just outside of the frame. And then I will choose it as the target. So cube. Alright, so that's the target. Now down here, I don't have to fill this in. I can automatically fill this in by clicking this button. But I have to have something else selected. So that'll do. Let me just fill range. Okay, so this is telling me this is my minimum range. Here's my max range. So my object is all the way over here. I have a minimum value. I'm going to put that at 1. Max value, I'll put it 20. So essentially, it's going to start here at 0. And by the time it gets to 0.569, my minimum value is going to be 1. So my line is going to be 1 there. By the time it gets to 1.26, which should be over here, it's going to be 20. So let's go ahead and render that. Take a look. It should still go fairly quickly. I'm going to hit Shift Home. Wait, let me just get rid of some of that. There we go. Alright, let's see how this shakes out. There we go. So, not quite what I expected, but we can see clearly that this is our outline, and it's kind of petering out to nothing over here. What I'm going to do, let's close out of that. I'm going to reduce this minimum so that it starts drawing that line earlier. So let's go to 0.25. And then let's render that again. Now, I should be able to see more red outline in this, theoretically. Let's see how it comes out. Okay, so I'm getting more over there. Let's just punch this up even more. So what I will do, I'll kick my minimum value to 5, max value to 25. Alright, let's do it again. And shift home, fill that in. Okay, here we go. Alright, so that's not bad. So if you look here, you can still see that main line is being drawn on top of this. And that's because, let me X out of this. If you look at my line set, my outline is underneath this. I'm going to put this on top now by clicking this arrow. Alright, now outline is going to be the one on top. So let's render. I'm going to change that color to black eventually, so it may not matter, but if you do have different colors, just know you can do that. Okay, so now it's blocking out that entire line. So what I'm going to do, let's go back to my color. Let's close this. Go to color. I'm going to change that to black. Let's see what it looks like. Shift home. And we shouldn't have a lot of drama with that outline over here. I'm getting some breaks, which I do not like. Let me just see if same object fixes that. I don't know if it will. Close out that. Let's strokes. Let's turn on same object. If that doesn't fix it, it may have to be fixed a different way, kind of with edge marks, meaning I'll have to mark those myself manually to be drawn. No, it didn't fix it. Actually, I think it made it worse. So we'll leave that alone. I'm going to X out of this. One thing I'm going to do too is just add a little roughness to this outline by going to geometry, and I'm going to add polygonization here. Let's throw that in here. So what this is going to do is it's going to kind of sharpen those lines. It's going to make straight lines out of everything. I'm leaving it on 10. The higher this is, the straighter the lines are going to get. They're going to move away from this figure. Let's see what happens. All right, let's zoom in. Okay. Fingers crossed. Okay, you can see it's kind of squaring off everything. What I will do, let's back out. I'm going to take this down to 4, and I think the thickness on this one I'm going to take down as well. 22. And let's see what we get. And here we go. Okay. I mean, that actually looks pretty good, I think. I like the difference from the interior lines. I may even take the thickness down just a little bit more. Let's see if I can get that down to 18. This I might do 2.5. I'm going to save this. Let's render one more time. And hopefully this kind of comes out the way I would expect. Alright. I can live with this. Yeah, let's keep this way. I think what I'm going to do next is fill in some missing lines from that main line set. I want to see more of his mouth here. I want to see these arm straps and kind of the interiors of these pads here he's got going on. Maybe in here too. Let's see what the contour looks like if I were to go back to my line set. Remember, I told it to only draw the external contour. I'm going to click contour. Let's just see if that gets me any more shapes in here. Really, you just experiment. You try to get Blender to draw as many shapes automatically as possible. There's always a point where you have to go back in and you have to assign something. Alright, no, I'm not going to go with this. Yeah, it's kind of overpowering my interior lines. I don't like any of this going on in here. Let's escape that. Let's uncheck that. And I think what I'll do, let me go back to my main. And see, I have edge mark here. I don't have any edge marks defined. I'm going to click on his face. Let's tab in edit mode. Let me go in materials once. Can I select? Press the period key on the numpad to zoom up. I'm going to go around these edges. So you see I've got the edge of his mouth selected. And I'm going to draw those lines by hitting Control E. Then I'm going to scroll down here and mark Freestyle Edge. So now those are green. So those are going to be drawn no matter what. And I think that crease line is being drawn. I could be wrong though. I'm going to draw something here too. Am I getting something there? No, I think I need to draw here. There we go. That's what I want. So I'm going to Control E, mark Freestyle Edge. So I got that. I think there's a couple things around. Oh, I'm still in the face. Let's back out here. Let's go to this hood. See if I can get around this. That's like the interior of that. There we go. Pressing the period key is going to zoom me out. So I want to get these lines here and make sure those are drawn. Mark Freestyle Edge. Tap A. Tab to get back out. And I think I wanted some lines in here too. Let's see what I can get. Not that. We'll soon find out if these are the lines I need. Control E will mark Freestyle Edge. I can't remember if I was good over there or not. I'm going to tap 0 to get the camera view. Let's tab out of that. And if I recall correctly, I wanted some lines here. Period on the numpad. Oh, right. We got both of those, so I'm not getting zoomed up as close as I would like. Let's border select. There we go. Okay, I'm going to just, I guess, force some lines. I don't know if that's the one I need. Nope. There we go. Control E. My Freestyle Edge. Do that. Let's grab some here. Not that. There we go. We're going to see, escape out of that because I screwed that up. We're going to see what really is going on now. So remember that, let me go back to my freestyle. This has to be selected edge mark. If edge mark is not on, then those edge marked lines will not be drawn. And as you saw, even though I had this on, since I had nothing marked, nothing else was drawn. So let's see what shows up. And sometimes I think we're going to have to restrict some of these depending on what I turn on next. And I'll show you how we go about that. So now I'm getting more lines here. You can see I got his whole mouth drawn. I got kind of a crease there. These are kind of sort of being drawn. I think I need to adjust those. I got some lines here, so that's really working out a lot better. You can see in here, in there, these lines. I'm not quite sure why those didn't draw, but that's fine. I still got to fix in here somewhat, but it's shaping up. It's interesting. I think that these gaps are they might be a result of me not having a subsurf modifier. It may not be smooth enough there. That could be the case. So let's back out. But next I'm going to actually bring in some of the buildings and let's just see how they're affected. Alright, so let's get these buildings in here. Let's close this up and let's go to my outliner and turn the city back on. We put that in its own collection. Let's close these up. So what I'm going to do here is turn on the view map cache. So what this is going to do, it's going to hold all of this in memory. It's going to make this. It's going to take a long time, and then when it's done, I won't have to do this again unless I actually change the geometry, which we'll see that I'll have to do that later, but for now it'll speed things up. Let's see what we get. Okay, so I skipped ahead here. We can see that render took 2 minutes 27 seconds. And let's see what's going on here. First thing is that my outliner on my figure is gone. It's now outlining the whole city here. And that's because of my external contour. And what that does is it separates an object from the background. So whatever's up against the background is what's getting outlined here. Alright, so I want to start limiting where these lines are drawn and curtailing them. So what I'm going to do first, actually let's go back here. Alright, that's our old one. That's our new one. Okay. So then let's close this up. I'm going to turn on collection for this main one. Let me move this to the top. Okay, turn on collection. Then down here, I'm going to choose the main collection there. So since I have inclusive selected here, it's only going to draw lines that are inside this collection, which we can see. Here's my collection, here's my city. So it's not going to draw anything in city because it's only targeting this one. Okay, let's see what we get with this. Okay, so now we can see that with my main style limited only to this figure, it's not drawing any lines in the city. But my outline is still going around that whole city. So I think what we'll do, let me go to my outline. Let's take a look here. I'm going to go back to my outline style. I'll turn on contour. So contour is just going to separate objects from each other, whereas external contour separates objects from the background. And let's do something else here. Let's close that up. Strokes. I'm going to turn on sketchy. That's going to draw a couple of lines, a couple other lines for every line that's drawn 3 times there. And I think I will take down that thickness. So my base thickness is 3. I'm going to change this to multiply. So then minimum line is going to be 1 point, which actually will be multiplied, so it'll be 3. This should be 3, so that should end up being 9 about. I think I will change the minimum here too. Okay, let's also change my range max. You kind of just get a feel for what that's going to be. I'm going to bring back my render window. Where am I at? Slot 2. Okay, that looks good. let's try and render this and see what we get. Okay, we're getting a lot more stuff. Not really the stuff we want though. Let's see what we can do here. That's what it looked like before. Here's what we get now. So we need to restrict this outline only to the figure. Let us cut out of this. Let me just see here. Okay, so let's cut out of this. Back to my line sets. Okay, I'm in outline. I'm going to turn on collection, and I'll tell it to only draw on that main collection. Alright, now let's go back and render. Alright, so now we got those lines showing up where they're supposed to. They're only on the figure. That looks good to me. But now we have to actually get those buildings in there. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and make a line set specifically for the buildings. Okay, let's make this. Name it City. Then what I'm going to do, I'll leave these on by default. I'm going to turn on collection. I'll tell it to only draw on the city. So let's then get to our line style. I'm going to name this just so I know what it is. Okay, I'll leave this here. Thickness. Alright, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add in another modifier. Distance from camera. Where before we had distance from object, this time I'm going to do distance from camera. And so my minimum range, I want it to be 1.5. And maximum, I'll have it at 4. So I can type stuff in here, or similar to the distance from object, I can click this fill range by selection. But unlike that one where I had to have 2 objects selected, this one I only need 1 because it knows where the camera is. I press 7 on the numpad just so I could get the top view. Now I'm going to press the home key. That should get me everything. Okay, so I'm going to choose, I don't know if I want that one. Actually, I think I'll just choose this. Let's see what kind of range I get. So this is what it filled in here. And it should change these values based on this range from the camera. Let me type 0 and get back to my camera. Double tap A to deselect everything. Let me just save this. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and render this. Okay, so we definitely got our city lines here. Only problem is these in the back are thicker and these closer to the camera are thinner. That's not really what I wanted. I wanted the reverse actually. So let's look in here. I mean, I could change these values, but the quickest way to reverse this is to hit invert. And then I'm going to render this again. Alright, so this is more like what I wanted. So we got kind of thicker lines toward the front, thinner lines toward the back, where the buildings are farther away from the city. Okay, so I think what we should do here, let me just go back and forth. Yeah, you can totally see the reversal. Alright. So then, I'm going to change some of these. Let me bring that render window back. I actually, in this building, there's not that much there. I'm going to mark some lines in there. And I think over here, too, I need some lines. So, let's get out of that. I'm going to tab into edit mode here. So I want to select these windows, and I want to mark their edges with Freestyle edge marks. Easiest way for me to do this is to go into my materials. I'm going to switch to face select mode by tapping the 3 button. My top arrow 3, not my numpad 3. So I'm gonna click here, and over here it's gonna tell me what selection that is. And down here I'll click select. Now I got them all. There's a few that are missing, but that's fine. I'm gonna hit Control E, mark Freestyle Edge. So I got those. I'm gonna click on this one. So that's this material slot. Alright, I got those. Control E, mark Freestyle Edge. Double tap A to deselect. Let's tab out of there. So this one, I'm going to go into my local editing mode. And I'm going to get these windows. Let's tab. I'll just keep shift clicking to get these, because I don't think they work out quite right. Let's do a Control E. And I think I need to get these as well, because there's a bit of an inset here. I don't know if we'll be able to see all those lines. So let's just grab these outer ridges. I think that should get me some decent lines there. So let's tab out of that. I want to hit my / to get out of local mode. Double tap A to deselect. Let me just save that. I'm going to go back to my freestyle and just make sure in this line set. Okay, I need to turn on edge mark. Otherwise it would not draw those marks I just made. So let's just render. Actually, let me bring this window back quick. Yeah, this is the one I want. Let's render here. Alright, so here's my new render. And so where are my lines? I clearly went and marked those here and here. And then I even turned on edge mark. Let's escape out of here. So the problem is I had this view map cache on, which I mentioned before. This is not going to update any of the changes I make to geometry, including marking edges as freestyle. So it was using old information. That's why I did not get those marks. I'm going to turn this off. That means it's going to take a while to regenerate a new view map. So you always got to be aware of that when you're doing this, because many times I got kind of frantic, frustrated. Why are my lines not showing up? And finally remember I have view map cache on. So let's go ahead and I'm going to render again here. Okay, so there's our lines finally showing up here like they should. And I think what we'll do now, let's actually go back and forth right. Alright, next I'm going to concentrate on this main building, because I do want this to be a little bit thicker, a little bit more prominent because it's in the front. So let's go deal with that. Let's close that up. I'm going to right away make a new line set for this. And I'll call it main building. So I'm going to turn on collection. I'm going to set this to its own collection, so I'm going to choose here. I'm going to press the M key for move. And I'm going to tell it to make a new collection, which I'll name main building. Okay, now I've chosen this. I can go ahead and pick main building. So it's not going to draw anything else except what's in that main building collection. Okay. I'm going to leave these on, but I think I will turn on contour as well. And I know I'm going to need some edge marks, so I'll turn that on just for later. Alright, in my line style, let's leave this. Let's go to thickness. I'm going to use a distance from object modifier. And I'm going to need an object to target, and I'm going to have to fill in that range. What I'm going to do is use this sphere as kind of a starting point. Let me press 7 on the numpad key. Actually, let's back all the way out. Let's get to this area. I'm going to press the period to zoom up on that. Here's my cube. I'm going to press Shift S and choose cursor to selected. So now my cursor's there. I could duplicate this, but just to do something different, I'm going to add in a UV sphere right at the cursor. Okay, and then I'm going to drag it to the back here. So I'm going to press G, then I'm going to press the Y key to restrict it to the Y axis and just move it up here. Okay, so I'm going to target that object. Press the 0 key to get back, and now I'll choose this. So I'll just type in sphere. Okay, I got it. All right, and then I'm going to choose this cube that's up here too. I need two things selected for distance from object. I'm going to tell it to fill in. So it's not giving me too much range here. Actually, I'm going to just back out a little bit here. Let's go. Let's see if I can bring that back. All right, now. Well, let's see what we get. Okay, I'm going to put my min value at 6. So close up here, it should be 6. Value max 2. All right, and I think what I'll do, add in a little bit of noise so the line is not super crisp. It's Perlin Noise 2D. The frequency is how often the noise repeats. The amplitude is how strong the effect is. I'm going to turn it down to 2. Okay, let's see what we get when we render here. Okay, that's not bad. That's really not bad at all. The thickness is kind of what I wanted, but I can see here that I'm missing some lines. And I played around with this building a bit, and I came to realize that there's some bad topology here, where it's not quite, the normals are not quite right, and you have to really determine how much work you're going to do on these objects sometimes. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to put some edge marks in here so I can draw some of these lines that I want. Let's see the difference here. Okay. I'm going to switch to slot 2. All right. So in here, I can see that I'm missing edges all around. I'm going to tab in here. I'm going to go to my local mode. And then what I think I'll do, let's turn off some of these other lines in here, like crease lines and such. So I don't want those. All right, those are out of the way. Okay, I'm in face mode here. I want some lines to kind of represent this building receding into space. So what I'm going to do is do some loop cuts, and then I'm going to mark those as freestyle edges. Let's see, I'm going to turn off my proportional editing. Just press the 2 button, 2 key to get into my edge mode. We can see here that this is not connected. This is part of the reason I think I'm getting some bad topology there. I'll click that, but I'm going to press Control R here. And you see it's giving me a line. It's going to make a cut there if I hit the return key. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and page up and get more lines. You could do that with the scroll wheel, but I'm not using a mouse, so I got to do it this way. So I'll hit the return key. Then I could move these back and forth if I wanted to, but they're fine where they are. So I'm just going to hit escape. Those are fine. I'm going to Control E. Mark those as freestyle edges. So we saw that this isn't connected. That's why I did not get any lines here. Let's do it again. Control R. That should be fine. Return key. I'll hit escape. All right, let's mark those. Okay, let's go back to my camera view. I need quite a few lines here, so I need this. Let's mark that one. Pretty sure I need these two. Just got edge. Let's see if I can get this whole thing. Need those. And I'm sure. I think I got this, but just in case, I'm just gonna mark up this whole thing, man. This whole thing. And then, what about this thing here? Because this one, I did play around and flip the normals and such, and not everything was working. Let's get a line out here on this thing, on this chimney thing or whatever this is. But I want to zoom up on this. Let's get this outer ring. Let's put a freestyle edge on that. Only other thing I think I need, I'm going to press 3 to get into face mode. Click this roof. Let me type Z to go to wireframe. So this is under here. There's not really a line showing here. And that's why I say I think the topology is kind of, it's a little bit haphazard on this particular building. All right, let me go back in edge mode. So I want that edge. I think I can get this edge down here too. So I'm going to grab these and I'm going to restrict to the x-axis. I can see I'm by this red line, I'm on the x-axis, G, X, and I'm going to move it in. And where I want it, I think is right there. That should do. Control E, mark freestyle edge. All right, let's get back to my solid. All right, I should get a bunch of lines here. Let's get out of my local view. Now I'm back in my camera view. I'm going to save this. And then let's see what we get in my render. Alright, so now I got a bunch more lines. It looks a lot better to me. But first thing you can see is there's a weird line going down the middle here and over here, and there's a line here that should not be drawn. What I determined is that, again, it's the normals, and those lines are coming from the silhouette edge type, because that edge type really relies on the direction of the normals. And again, I tried flipping these and doing all kinds of stuff, and it was just a lot to monkey around with. What you got to do, I had to determine if I wanted to go in Photoshop and erase these, or did I want to spend time fixing this building so that the normals were right. And you got to figure that out for yourself. For me, this is kind of a pinup one, so it would be okay to erase them in Photoshop. But if I had panel after panel after panel of this building in my comic, then I would definitely spend the time up front and get rid of that. But luckily in this case, I can get rid of these lines by just turning off the silhouette edge type. So really, since I marked everything, I don't necessarily need all these other ones. But still, I'm going to turn off silhouette. Let me go back here. Yeah. Turn that off. Let's render again. Alright, so that did it. I definitely got rid of those. I think, I had a couple extra things in here whatsoever. That's fine. But I got rid of the worst of those lines. So then I think I'm going to call that quits on this building. And what I'm going to do next is put some detail. I think I want some detail in these arms and legs. I'd like to kind of model these out with lines so we can kind of see their depth. So let's get out of this. And so what I'm going to do is put some edge marks in here, because I really don't have any other way to get lines in there. So first, I'm going to go into local mode on this thing, this shirt. So let's tab into edit mode. Now what I want to do, I want more lines in here actually. I think I'm going to subdivide this And let's Control E. I'll go to subdivide. All right, so I got more geometry here. So I think I want like every other one of these, every other of these loops. That's what those are. So I'm going to go into face mode, press 3, or I could click these buttons up here. Let's get close. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, that selects everything. If I choose L, hit the L key, it's going to select all linked faces. So that's everything here. I want to limit that. I'm going to click here and hit the numpad period just so I can zoom up. All right, let's get a loop here somehow. Not that one. There we go. I don't think I want that one though. I want one of these in here. If I could, please. There we go. All right. I'm going to hide this with the H key. So now that's gone. Now if I press the L key, I've only got this. That's really what I need here. So then what I'm going to do, I'm going to use checker deselect to help me just select every other one of these loops. But it's not that straightforward. I'll show you what checker deselect does. Okay, I'll select, checker deselect. Oh, something has to be active. Let's shift click that. That's active. Checker deselect. So you can see it's deselecting every other one. But that's not really going to work for me the way it is. So let's deselect. I'm going to go to my edge selection. I'll select one of these edges. Then I'm going to go down here, select edge rings. Okay, I've got this whole thing selected. Now I'm going to do the checker deselects. Okay, it's deselected every other one. And now I need to get the whole loop. Select edge loops. Okay, I got them. Control E and mark freestyle edges. All right, the same thing over here. Let me go back into face mode, click one of these. All right, that's looking good. All right, let's hide that. And hit the L key. All right, that's all I got there. Let's go back into edge mode. Get one of these, select edge rings. Okay, checker deselect, and then I'm going to select the edge loops. Let's mark those. It's freestyle edges. Okay, so let's get some of the lines in here too. This one might be a little bit more tricky. Select edge rings. I'll get rid of the stuff in the collar. I'm going to go to my wireframe and hit the B key for box select. I'll hold down the shift key. I'll deselect a bunch of these. Alright, let's go back to solid. And checker deselects. So now, let's get some loops. Alright, some of these got to go. Let's see if I can undo some of these. I mean, that one's not too bad. Some of these actually aren't too bad. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. What am I looking at? Okay. I think I can actually get closer if I do a orthographic view. Let's see if I can undo some of these. No. There we go. I might leave it at this. And then I'm going to Control E and mark freestyle edge. Okay. Lastly, I'll unhide or reveal hidden all the stuff that I hid. So pressing the L key should get everything. Alright, let's tab back out and get out of local mode. I gotta do the same thing with these pants. Alright, first I'm gonna subdivide. I got a lot of geometry here. And select, loops, edge rings, checker deselect, loops. Okay, some of this stuff I don't want. Get rid of that. Alright, the rest of that should be fine. Freestyle edge. Loops. Checker deselect. Alright, I gotta get rid of a bunch of stuff here. That looks good. But I do want some of those lines in here gone. See ya. Okay, let's mark those edges. And let's tab out, get out of my local view. Alright, let's save this. So I got a bunch of lines coming up in this bodysuit. Let's render it and see what we get. Alright, so we can see I got a ton of lines coming in here, and they're being drawn in the same style as the main collection. I would like to lighten these up and give them a different style, so that means I'm gonna have to make another line set for these and start doing some restricting to make sure that they're only drawn in the style that I want. So let's escape out of here. And I'm gonna make another line set. Let's call these body lines. And down here I'll also name them. So in body lines, I only want edge marks. And I'm going to choose collection, and I will choose the main collection so that only draw in there. And what am I going to do next here? So let's change the style. So let's go to my thickness. I'm going to do in a long stroke. But this time, I'm going to change it to a curve. Let's get down here. Okay, my min value. I want these lines to be kind of a suggestion, not so heavy. So we're going to really take down the size on these. Max value can be 6. And in this curve, what I'm going to do, let's put this up here. In the center, I'm going to go all the way down to nothing, virtually. I think this should be what I need. And then in geometry, I'm going to add a modifier, 2D offset. So essentially, it's going to look like it's going outside of the lines. Let's just change the endpoint here. And change that to 5. So we should have more of a kind of a hand-drawn look to it. Also, I think I will smooth out these meshes here. I'm going to add a subsurf modifier. I just hit Control 2 to do that, and so it's going to have 2 level. In the viewport, I'm going to change it to 1, just so I can move around easier. I'll do the same thing here. Here, I could go down here in the deform section, or actually it's in the generate subdivision subsurface. Alright, so that looks good. Same as that one. Okay, so let's see what we get if we were to render this. Let me just make sure I go back in my layers. So, line set. Alright, let's render again. Okay, So that one took a long time to render. It took like 9 minutes, and that's because I already subdivided these, and then I went and added that subdivision subsurface modifier on top of it, so it had to deal with all that extra topology. Anyway, so this still didn't look quite the way that I wanted, and that's because I have 2 line sets drawing these lines. So what I got to do is go back and just restrict these lines even more. So let's get out of this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is turn on face marks here. And I'm going to tell these body lines to exclude face marks. So wherever it encounters faces that are marked for freestyle, it's not going to draw those. And what that means is now I have to go and actually mark those faces. So I only want lines drawn here on this shirt and these pants. So what I'm going to do, let's go to my outliner. Let's turn off city, turn off that main building. I'm going to turn off this cube and this sphere as well. So I got this shirt selected. I'm going to select these pants. Then I'm going to Control I. It's going to invert my selection. And then I'm going to hit the tab key. Now, I don't think I could do this in Blender 2.7. In 2.8, I got all these meshes, even though they're separate objects, I'm editing them all at the same time. So I'll double tap A to deselect. I'm going to tap A. I got everything selected. I'm going to go to face data. I'm going to mark everything as a freestyle face. So let's deselect. You can see that all this stuff is green now. Alright, let's go ahead and tab out of that. Okay, I'm going to bring everything back. Bring back this cube and such. So let's get back into my freestyle. So it's only going to draw those lines in the shirt and the pants because these are marked. Everything else is marked, or in the collection is marked with a freestyle face. So it's going to exclude those. But now I got to go back to my main. I got to turn on face marks because this also has edge marks in the face and other places. And I got to tell it to only draw where faces are marked for freestyle. So that's going to be everything else but those lines. Okay. So let's see what comes of this. Alright, now this is what I was expecting to see. We kind of have the suggestion of lines here, and that's pretty much all I wanted. I didn't want those heavy lines. And I think you can see, let's see if I can get in here a little bit to, whoops. Yeah, you can kind of see over here where the 2D offset is kicking those lines over. So it kind of looks like it is more hand drawn, and you just missed. Let's get back here. And yeah, I think that's pretty good. So that's all I wanted to do here. What I'm going to do next is show how these lines look over the top of that artwork we did last time in the Punch It Up video. Okay, so now I just moved over to Photoshop, and here's the render we just made. We'll see what this looks like over the artwork from the last time. Now what I did is I brought in, this is what we did last time, and this is just worked out at Daz Studio, and I don't have any lines on here, but what I discovered is when you put these lines on, you really can't see them. That particular artwork didn't lend itself too well to seeing the effect of it. So what I did was I went back and I re-rendered that using the ambient method that I came up with. It probably one of my first videos, just showing how I made comics by turning everything into the ambient channel, getting some really flat color, and this is what it came out like. So if I were to turn on this layer here now we can kind of see there's more opportunity for us to see what the lines are doing here. And basically that's pretty much it. So I got the lines that I wanted here. I probably might reduce the outline around the character a little bit, at least on the right side there. I might reduce that. And I think what you could do, then you could use color more back here to indicate that those buildings are farther away, and that would work good. There's a lot of color work to be done here because this is flat, but you can now see what you can do with Freestyle. Maybe if you don't even do all the things I did, you can see what is possible. And I'm going to have links to the Freestyle, the Blender Freestyle manual, and then I will have links to some of the other Freestyle resources that I used over time. And I'm going to have this written up on my site as well, so there'll be a link to that, so you can go through it kind of at your leisure and not have to find that point in the video. So anyway, that's going to do it for now. Let me know what you guys think. If you got any questions, or if you've done anything you want me to see, I'd like to take a look at it. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I will see you guys next time.